Nation, we're here at ACRP 2024 in Anaheim with Robert. If you watched the vlog, you saw me walk up to him. He doesn't know who I am. I'm trying to get studies for my site. So he's in charge of one of the biggest sponsors of, amongst the other things, finding sites for your trial. So,
Absolutely.
Robert, you want to just introduce yourself really quickly
Yeah,
for Guru
sure
Nation?
thing. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm Robert Hassan. I'm one of the U.S. study managers at Santa Fe. As Dan said, he came by the booth, asked me to speak and give a little bit of insight on what we are and what we do, and I was happy to be here.
You went like how long were you CRA for?
I was a CRA probably for about 5 or 6 years.
So you got a lot of empathy for these CRAs out here.
I mean, listen, it's a grind.
Yeah.
I fully appreciate what they have to do on a day-to-day basis. The travel, that was part of my motivation for trying to get out of that role. Is just I had small kids and being away from home was a challenge.
Wow.
But it gave me a great foundation. My daughter actually has just graduated and is trying to get into the industry, and I'm trying to put her on that path because the CRA just gives you a great perspective.
Yep.
In clinical research, whether you want to stay in clinical, you want to go in project management, whatever the case may be, it gives you a great perspective. And I firmly believe that anyone in clinical research should be a CRA at some point in their life.
Yeah. What are some of the tips you give coordinators, even though you weren't necessarily a coordinator? As a CRA, you work with coordinators, you nurture them.
Well, I think you touched on it. Nurturing relationship is the biggest thing. As a CRA, the first thing I try to do was establish a great rapport and relationship with my coordinators. One, when you have a good relationship, they're more willing to go above and beyond. Like when there's a query deadline or something that maybe needs to get done immediately. I always just try to be personal, always be available. Communication is so key. It's hard, I think, now because a lot of CRAs have 5, 6, 7 protocols they're working on, maybe 12, 15 sites, and it's a challenge. But being able to respond quickly, timely, always being able to be available to your sites, I think helps build that strong relationship, which will be important for them down the road.
There's a lot of, we have to touch on this a little bit. I'd be curious to get your thoughts. A lot of layoffs going on at the CRO level. I don't even know which CRO.
I've heard the same. There seems to be a lot of buzz about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that means there's a lot of junior CRAs that are out of work. My advice to them would be try to find a site near you because the sites are busy. The sites are not laying off. The sites are actually hiring. My site in Yuma, we just hired someone. She's going to start Monday. That's our 5th coordinator now. We're only a 3-year-old company. There's a lot of growth at the sites. And I think the CROs overhired because of COVID and all the vaccine work.
They do. It's a challenge. It's a fine balance. CRA attrition is probably the biggest thing CROs and even sponsors have to deal with. For me as a study manager, I hate seeing CRAs have to transition off.
You have to deal with that directly as your day-to-day.
It's probably the biggest challenge we have from an
Wow.
operational standpoint, just because you lose that continuity, right?
Yeah.
You lose a CRA, you got to rebuild that relationship. You get someone else new. Sometimes they have to be retrained. There's cost, there's time, and it is part of what we have to deal with on a day-to-day, but it definitely sets us back. I think for those CRAs that are out there looking for work, I think a coordinator avenue is a great opportunity for them. I don't think they think that is maybe derailing them from their clinical research path, but I think it's a great opportunity for them to get some site perspective. I think more CRAs probably should do that, but they probably just don't think that's the right.
Yeah.
It's detouring them from their career pathway.
So as a clinical study unit lead, is that what
I work in. I'm a U.S. study lead.
U.S. study lead. You don't just get there overnight, right? You said CRA, then your first
It's
job
been a
was
long
at
journey.
Amgen, you said, right?
I worked for Amgen. I worked for a couple of Parexel, PRA, but I worked for a lot of small biotech and startups.
Biotechs, okay.
Yeah.
What were some of the roles at those companies? Just so you give people some stepping stones.
Yeah, so just quick and dirty. I started out as a clinical research assistant at Parexel. It was kind of what opened the door for me. I then moved into a CRA position. From a CRA position, I held a couple different levels of CRAs until I eventually became a lead CRA within a sponsor, like a small biotech. From there, I was really at a crossroad about either going into line management or project management, and I went the project management route. So from there, there's a number, companies interchange titles all the time, but CTM, clinical operations manager, whatever you would call it. it's essentially a project management role. And that's kind of the pathway I took. So overseeing large phase 3 studies for these startup companies. For working for small companies, you wear lots of hats. So while my title may have been that, at one point I was the regulatory specialist, I was the budget and contract person, recruitment specialist, but ultimately the project manager. You oversee all of that.
Advice for sites maybe running their first study or maybe not running their first study, maybe just general advice for sites coming from a lead at a large sponsor. I mean, there's not too many sponsors bigger than you guys.
No, and it's actually a great topic, and only because it's kind of a it's close to my heart right now. I'm
Yeah.
dealing with study startup for a
Wow.
large study, and one of our biggest challenges is the timelines it's taking to get a site started.
2 weeks.
Well, I wish I could work with more clinical research units. I'm working with
Yes.
a lot of large university hospitals, academic
That's
centers.
the problem.
That is the problem. I have some sites that are close to a year for startup right now.
A year.
Yeah. And so
Wow.
going back to your original point, to me, that is where sites can really get their foot in the door. Sponsor companies are looking for ways to compress, shorten those startup timelines because obviously the quicker we can get you from selection to startup to looking for patients, that's what we're looking for, right? Because we have aggressive timelines, enrollment drives all of that. The sooner we get you up and running, the faster you can start enrolling.
Yeah, I tell my coordinators because I've trained all of them on how to do startup. Right. We're 2.5 years old, so it's only until very recently that I've kind of removed myself from the startup activities.
Mhm.
But I'm watching them closely. I'm telling them like, where are you on this? It's on a big whiteboard. The studies that we have, what's missing? Why did this sub I not sign this financial disclosure? Like, let's get these things.
But it's still I mean that's what probably sets your site above other else. It's those nitty gritty, those details.
Yeah.
Because that's what you're all ready to go, and all of a sudden you find out you have a financial disclosure that didn't get done, right?
Yeah, or like an IRB approval, like, and maybe it's easy for us to brag about how quick we are. We only have like 2 sub-Is and 3 coordinators,
Right.
right? We're not like an academic medical center where we have like 30 sub-Is.
Exactly.
People
Mhm.
are on vacation, but still, a year is a little too long for.
It is, and
startup.
it becomes problematic because when you have a large volume of those sites, all of a sudden your timelines start getting in jeopardy because you're not enrolling yet, right? And
What are some tech tools that you guys like you've seen? Because from what I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, sponsors don't like to force sites to use tools. This is one of the things I actually respect about sponsors is they're very conscious about, well, how will the sites respond to this tool, right? Like, it's very easy to just throw tech at everything. And
yeah, I mean, it. I will tell you,
what are your thoughts on this?
it's a balance. So I definitely have shifted. I mean, when I was a monitor, we still use paper CRFs, right? So we've come leaps and bounds in technology wise, but there are challenges. I mean, some sites, access always is an issue, right? You're forcing this technology. People's email, it gets stuck in spam. They don't see the registration link and they don't sign up. You're ready to activate the site, and lo and behold, the coordinator doesn't have access to ABC system.
Yep.
I mean, it's challenges, but I think that stems back to how do we bypass that, overcome that? It's the CRAs. As a sponsor, I have to rely on my CRAs to help support like the reminders, getting this here, like, hey,
Yeah.
coordinator XYZ does not have access to.
So you get nitty gritty still.
We
in
have
your
to.
role.
I mean, because it's essential to activations. I mean, a lot of our activation requirements still require ensuring that you have access to all this technology, and because the technology is required, it's essential to how many studies are being conducted nowadays.
Wow. That is interesting to hear. So that the sponsors are still someone in your role. You're still actively involved
We
in the
are.
details on particular
Well,
studies.
I would say not all, but when things are starting to slip in timelines, then we have to get involved to make sure that we get back on track.
As we wrap up, maybe can you give us like 3 key performance indicators you look for as a trial's going on for signs of success or trouble?
Sure. Well, from a success standpoint, obviously one of the key indicators is, I would say, not necessarily recruitment from a number standpoint, but quality patients. So consistent enrollment with quality data. I mean, because it doesn't do us any good if a site's a high enroller and they have all kinds of quality
Yeah,
issues.
yeah.
Most of that data may be excluded. So we want consistent enrollment, and quality data. Timeliness, like I said, we're looking at ways to constantly compress and shorten and get those startup timelines shortened. So sites that are engaged, actively responding, those are the sites that we are going to target. Those are sites typically we will target for the priority, and they're the sites that are going to have long-lasting relationships with the sponsor companies.
It's real interesting to hear. Robert, I appreciate you
Of
coming
course,
out
thanks.
and being accessible. And I didn't realize when I walked up to you at the booth that you're that involved in the studies.
We are, but that's part of the reason why,
So you guys send like your real workers
And
out here.
we
You're
are.
not just the face that
No,
smiles.
I actually worked a half day on Friday, drove up here, and we were working the booth by 5:00 last night.
Good for you guys. Good for you guys. I appreciate you coming out.
Thank
Do you
you.
have a LinkedIn? People can connect with you?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
If you come
Everyone
by our
wants
thing,
to.
I do have a LinkedIn, but
We'll put it underneath the video.
You're great. Perfect.
Yeah, we'll put it underneath the video on the podcast. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
And thanks for giving sites hope. And
Absolutely.
I'll definitely be reaching out to you personally
I expect it.
for some stuff. I
Thanks a
appreciate
lot.
it. Thank you. Hey, if you guys like that kind of content, make sure you like, subscribe, comment, share. Stay tuned for more videos.